So recently, James Gunn revealed the Superman follow-up will be titled Man of Tomorrow, with a release date of July 9th, 2027. This is honestly pretty insane news, not only to me, but to most of the DC community. Not only do we now have the confirmed title of the sequel and the release date, but we also know that Lex Luthor will be returning alongside Superman, and we'll see the debut of the power suit in live action. So for this announcement, we got these three images. Two where Superman and Lex appear to be working together, and one where they're fighting each other. We also have heard from Gunn himself that the Superman sequel was a follow-up of sorts, but he wouldn't describe it as a direct sequel. He also recently said that the film is as much a Lex Luthor film as it is a Superman film. I initially thought it was going to be a Batman and Superman World's Finest film, then I thought it was going to be a Superman and Supergirl team-up, and while I do think Supergirl will have a supporting role in this movie, we now have confirmation that this movie is actually a Superman and Lex Luthor team-up film. Now, we obviously saw the hatred on full display from Lex towards Superman, so whoever the main antagonist or threat in this movie is, well, it would have to be someone extremely powerful to make Lex Luthor feel like he needs Superman's help. And recently, we actually did get confirmation from James Gunn himself that Lex and Superman will be working together to stop a much more powerful threat. So in this video, we're going to speculate as to who that powerful threat could be. Who is the main villain of this Man of Tomorrow movie? So we're going to be going over 4 candidates of who I think the realistic contenders to be the main villain are. I could do more, but I honestly just wanted to narrow it down a bit, and these are the most realistic candidates I have in mind. So first on the list of potential villain candidates, let's talk about Brainiac. So Brainiac, as most of us know, is a supercomputer obsessed with knowledge. He is one of Superman's most formidable opponents and has a long history of clashing with him. There are a couple of different depictions of Brainiac's origin. Sometimes he is depicted as an alien supercomputer, and other times he is depicted as a Coluan cyborg. He is obscenely powerful, and he goes around the universe collecting data and cities. He even shrinks cities down and puts them into bottles to keep aboard his ship, hanging on to the last remnants of each civilization he destroys so that he is the sole possessor of the data. It is honestly insane to me that we've now had 7 solo Superman movies, and not a single one has featured Brainiac as the film's main villain. Brainiac is arguably Superman's most infamous villain aside from Lex Luthor, and I think the likelihood of him being the main villain of this film is very high. There are a couple reasons for this. For one, we did see some artwork in a behind-the-scenes look of Superman that depicted Brainiac. Obviously, this wasn't official concept art for the movie, but Gunn also said that he considered having Brainiac as the main villain of the first Superman film before ultimately deciding on Lex Luthor. Number 2, Superman and Lex are working together in this film. Brainiac is extremely formidable because he can take Superman physically, but he is also one of the most intelligent beings of the DC universe. If he's threatening to destroy Earth or take Metropolis as a bottle city, Superman is going to need someone intelligent to help counter the attack, thus bringing back Lex Luthor with a chance at redemption. I also really quick do want to say, I don't think this would be Lex fully turning good and becoming a hero like in Lex Luthor Man of Steel or anything like that. I think this would be something he does because he feels like he has to. It would also be a good way for him to get back in the public's favor, teaming up with Earth's most powerful hero to stop a potential world-ending threat. Realistically, I don't know how much that would do for him, as he has been outed as almost collapsing a black hole on the world, but I still think that would be the goal of bringing back Lex for a team up with Superman. So yeah, ultimately, I think it's going to come down to 2 characters on this mini list that I think will be the main villain. This one makes the most sense to me, as Brainiac is one of Superman's best villains, but has yet to have a live-action adaptation outside of the Krypton TV show. So next up, let's talk about who many consider to be the ultimate threat of the DC universe, and that is the Lord of Apocalypse, Darkseid. So Darkseid is the ruler of the planet Apokolips. The planet is essentially the closest thing to hell in the DC universe outside of hell itself. Everyone there is required to serve Darkseid, and it's pretty much a slave planet. That's pretty much the best I can do to shorten it up, but yeah, as a result of his authoritarian rule, Darkseid has a massive and powerful army with many extremely powerful generals. Steppenwolf, Calabac, Granny Goodness, and many more powerful new gods work with him in his quest for power. I'm going to be pretty brief with this one. No, I don't really think that Darkseid is going to be the main villain of this film. I think at this point, people know Darkseid as a potential world-ending threat, and while I do think that the villain of this next Superman film will be world-ending, I don't think it will be quite on the level of Darkseid. I am almost 100% certain Darkseid exists in the DCU, and we did get confirmation that Tom King was actively working on a Mr. Miracle animated show. It wasn't specifically stated that the show would take place in the DCU, but James Gunn has credited Tom King as being a major part of building out the new DCU, which is to me all the confirmation needed that the show will be part of the larger universe. As a lot of you know, you can't tell the origin of Mr. Miracle without Darkseid, especially if the Tom King Mr. Miracle story is adapted. Yapping aside, I think Darkseid would be saved for a Justice League film or a New Gods film. The Justice League hasn't even formed yet, and if you have Darkseid show up just to get defeated by Superman in one movie, I just feel like it would be a waste. I wouldn't hate it if this ends up being the case, but he's definitely not my top choice. Next up, let's talk about Doomsday. So Doomsday is one of Superman's most powerful villains and is actually responsible for the death of Superman in the story of the same name from the 1990s. In the original storyline, Doomsday was a science experiment in the early days of Krypton. He had to endure many horrific experiments throughout the course of his early life, turning him into the monstrous form we know him as today. He was able to escape Krypton on a supply ship where he would go on a rampage throughout the universe. Eventually he arrived on Earth where he would end up soloing the entire Justice League before ultimately killing Superman. So yeah, Doomsday is extremely powerful and would definitely fit the idea of a character so powerful that Lex and Superman would have to team up. There are a couple of reasons I don't see this happening though. For one, I don't think they want to do the death of Superman this early. Obviously there are other stories where Superman fights Doomsday, but Death of Superman is the most infamous one, and in my opinion it's the best one as well. It feels like a story that would come too soon at this point in the DCU, and off the top of my head I can't think of any Doomsday versus Superman story that I would want to see adapted, especially in comparison to the other things I'd like to see in this movie. On top of that, we've had so many different Superman movies and iterations at this point, but the movies always seem to circle back to the same villains. We've had 7 Superman movies, 8 counting Batman vs Superman, and we've pretty much only had Lex Luthor and General Zod, as well as Doomsday in Batman vs Superman. I think Gunn is going to want to go a different route here, and I think someone like Brainiac or the next character we talk about on this list would be the way to go. And on the topic of that next character, let's discuss the leader of Warworld, Mongul. So Mongul is the leader of his own satellite planet, Warworld. I've talked about Warworld a number of times on this channel, but I'll just briefly go over Mongul and his planet before I get into discussing him in relation to the movie. So Warworld is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's divided between the very fortunate upper class and everyone else that is forced into slavery. Warworld also has competitive gladiatorial combat as entertainment for the upper class. Those in the slave class are forced into barbaric combat in an arena where they must take each other out to survive. Superman Warworld is one of my favorite modern Superman stories. It involves Superman bringing a team of heroes to liberate Warworld and free the slave class from its dictator's rule. It would be an awesome story to see. The only thing that would be different if this does end up being a Warworld movie is that our current Superman is pretty young, while the version from the comic book was a much older veteran Superman. Another interesting thing about this story is that Superman's powers are limited due to Warworld having a red sun. He's not perfectly capable as usual, and he has to rely heavily on his leadership skills to take down Mongul. I've said this before, but it does a great job of illustrating that Superman is more than just an extremely powerful enforcer. His leadership is just as important to his character as his strength. Anyway, why do I think it could be Mongul? Well, honestly, I'm totally overanalyzing, but just based off of these 3 pictures we got as a preview of the movie, I almost do want to predict that this is going to be a Warworld movie. So let's go over why. So firstly, James Gunn has described this as a Superman sequel of sorts. Like I said, I thought it would be a Superman and Supergirl film, which we now know is going to be a Superman and Lex Luthor film. And I'm sure Supergirl will have a supporting role, but it does seem like the movie is going to be helmed by Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor and David Cornsweet as Superman. And like I said, we have these 3 images, one where Superman and Lex appear to be buddies, one where Superman and Lex appear to be fighting something, and one where they're fighting each other. I'm thinking, what if they go to Warworld to prevent an attack on Earth, and in this process are captured and forced to fight each other, which is what we see in the teaser image here. I don't know, I'm kind of just spitballing, and we're definitely going to find out a lot more about this movie over the next year or so, but I do think that Mongul is a strong possibility. Ultimately, I really do think it's 50-50 as to who the main villain is between Brainiac and Mongul. Whoever the big threat is going to be very powerful, and both of these characters fit the bill perfectly. Also, just another thing that I'm probably overanalyzing, but Mongul's granddaughter, Mongul, or daughter, I don't really remember, is in the Suicide Squad, very briefly. James Gunn's Suicide Squad movie from 2021. She is in it for just a little bit, so maybe James Gunn loves Mongul, I don't know. But yeah, I think Darkseid is too powerful, and I think the DCU is trying to separate itself from Snyder's vision while also using villains we haven't seen before, hence why I don't think it'll be Doomsday. I will say, seeing someone like Ultra Humanite, Metallo, or Amazo could be interesting as well. There's been so many rumors flying around about this project in the last couple days. There's rumors that Jon Stewart, Peacemaker, the Justice Gang, and more are going to be involved. I'm not sure about all that, but it'll be fun to speculate as to who's going to be in this movie and what the story's going to be about as the production starts to ramp up, because it is going to be filming in less than a year. If this movie's going to come out July 2027, then they're going to have to start production in the spring probably, and that's when we're going to find out casting details, what the story's going to be, who the villain's going to be, and I'm really excited. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know who you think the main villain of this movie is going to be. I might just put up a YouTube community poll actually after this video, so go to that, go check that out and go vote, because I'm curious to see who you guys think the main villain of this movie is going to be. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.